everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this Netflix review. The fact that you are willing to sacrifice a few minutes out of your day to consume my content really does mean the world to me. For those of you that are unaware, I review everything that gets released on Netflix. So if you're ever curious about a new movie, series or show and want to find out if it's worth your time, come to my channel and I will let you know. So subscribe if you haven't, and let's jump right into this new Netflix anime movie, Bright Samurai Soul. And I went into this movie with incredibly low expectations, but after the opening sequence, I suddenly got a lot more excited about the movie. But then by the end, that excitement had withered off and I felt almost deflated at the end of it. And so this movie really took me on a roller coaster of emotions. And I'm still processing those emotions, but let's ultimately talk about the story. Let's just start off with that. We ultimately follow a little elf girl who's discovered to be a bright, and she ends up getting two protectors that are willing to look after her and just make sure that she remains safe. Of course, everyone wants to get this bright. Everyone's trying to get this one to use it for their own abilities, for their own selfish desires. This Netflix anime is, of course, also influenced and inspired by the live action movie Bright, and so that was exciting to re-explore that world. Of course, Bright was a big film for Netflix. It was something that they put a lot of advertising into. It had a decent to good reception from fans, and so of course Netflix is going to want to revisit one of their more popular franchises. Was this the best way to do that? I don't know. So I feel very similarly about this new Netflix anime for Bright that I do with the anime for The Witcher that came out recently about Vesemir. Both of them were serviceable, but were they necessary? I definitely believe I enjoyed this movie more than The Witcher anime, simply because it did feel more grounded. It felt like it belonged more into the lore and established universe that was established in Bright. But at the same time, it was such a far departure from the core concept of the original Bright movie that it kind of alienates fans of that original movie, especially with a different medium altogether. I mean, again, this is a Netflix anime. We're going from live action to anime in a completely different time setting with different characters, a completely different culture. So it is definitely alienating to fans of the original movie, but it does also keep the core elements and the core ideals of that original movie. Unfortunately for me, the biggest disappointment of this movie was the animation. When it comes to anime, you expect fluid animation and you expect beautiful character designs. And ultimately, all of that felt very flat for me. For whatever reason, there's an incredibly low frame rate in this movie. And so you can see characters actually moving around like this. If you watch the trailer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you decide to watch it on your phone, you're actually going to do yourself a favor, because on the smaller screen, you can't really notice how low the frame rate is. But it gets this incredibly janky feeling across, especially in the action sequences. You're watching these masters at work, these samurai masters and these masters of the katana, of the sword. But when they move, because of the low frame rates, everything feels janky and it doesn't feel like they're experienced. If you watched Enter the Spider-Verse, you'll probably know about how they gave Miles Morales fewer frames than Peter B. Parker because they wanted to show Miles Morales isn't as experienced. And that's how the whole film feels. It feels like everyone is out of their depth simply because nothing feels realistic, nothing feels fluid. When it comes to the character designs themselves, they are serviceable. Of course, they're inspired by the Bright movie, and you can see that within the orcs. But what really threw me off was the shading and detail within this film. I think if you want to compare this to another show, compare it to the What If series by Marvel, where I believe they went overboard with the shadows and those harsh lines. In this movie, there's barely any shadow. There's no depth of field in that way. You're looking at characters and it feels like they've just got lights all the way around them because there's no shadows on their character models. Even if you look at the environment around them, everything is just plain. There's no shadows, there's no depth of field, and it feels like you're watching there going, there's no detail in this world. If you look at the characters' faces, that's what you get. You know what I mean? There's no detail, and it's very hard for these characters to emote because even when they are emoting, it's just a line and two eyes. There's very little detail to everything and anything in the environment whatsoever. So that was really disappointing to me as a fan of animation. Of course, it is a stylistic choice, and I can tell you this right now, there are going to be people that enjoy it. By the end of the film, I was starting to find myself immersing in it a little bit more. But when we got to the climax at the end, when we got to that final confrontation, again, I just felt a little bit disappointed because the choreography was great and watching the action sequences is engaging. But when you're watching that low frame rate and when you're watching these character models that don't have much detail fighting one another, it's very hard to immerse yourself in that. Another gripe for me was the techno soundtrack they decided to go with. I don't know why they chose techno or more electronic, simply because the world doesn't suit it. Even the action sequences doesn't suit it. We're talking about like samurais and orcs fighting with swords. There's no place for electronic music or techno music in that. So that was another gripe I had. But overall, I did find myself enjoying the movie and I am looking forward to a potential sequel, whether that's now going to be another anime or hopefully one day a live action. I think it could have been great if we actually got a live action bright prequel set in this world, because I think having live action sword sequences between a samurai and an orc would have been so engaging and so much fun to watch. So I would recommend this film to fans of the original film, even though I feel like you might be alienated quite a bit. And I would recommend this to fans of the Netflix anime genre. If you enjoyed the Witcher anime, you will find enjoyment in this as well. But I feel like your typical anime fans, or those that read manga or very just immersed in the Japanese culture of things and the way they do their animation, I feel like you might be a little bit disappointed simply by the character designs and the frame rate. But guys, thank you so much for watching this review. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. It would mean the world to me. Give this video a like, and I hope to see you again in another review.